Hey everyone, with me today is this 2021 Nissan Armada. So the Armada gets a facelift for 2021. The changes consist of updated styling front and rear. You can see it's a little bit blocky, maybe a little bit more modern than in years past. And then on the inside, it gets a redesigned gauge cluster with a partially digital display, a new center stack and center console, and the big change is an updated infotainment system. The Armada now comes standard with a 12.3-inch infotainment screen with Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. That used to be a feature reserved mostly for luxury cars, so it's cool to see wireless CarPlay making its way down into the mainstream. It also gains an integrated trailer brake controller for 2021. The Armada is an old school, full-size body-on-frame SUV. This is a vehicle that you buy if you need to use all three rows fairly often. It has room for up to 8. It has plenty of cargo space, especially when you're not using that third row. And perhaps most importantly, it has an 8,500-pound towing capacity. That towing capacity puts it on par with most other full-size SUVs, those being the Ford Expedition, the GM Twins, the Chevrolet Tahoe and Suburban, and Yukon and Yukon XL. You've also got the Toyota Sequoia, and to a degree, the Toyota Land Cruiser. The first generation Armada was based on the Nissan Titan pickup. A new Armada came out for 2017, that's this one, but what's interesting there, well, two things. First of all, the Armada is based on the Nissan Patrol, which is a vehicle kind of like the Toyota Land Cruiser that is designed primarily with foreign markets like Australia and the Middle East in mind. Now, the current generation Patrol came out for the 2011 model year, and what the second gen Armada here basically is a renamed version of that vehicle. So while this vehicle went on sale in the United States for 2017, it's based on a design that is basically 10 years old. And the Patrol roots really tell the story of the Armada. To most people, the formula is pretty basic here. It's a big SUV that can haul a lot of people in tow. But what's interesting to me is that this vehicle was designed primarily for foreign markets. So while it works pretty well in the US, most people won't notice too many quirks about it. It's built in Japan, it's designed for use all across the world, so it doesn't quite have the American feel of the Yukon, the Tahoe, the Expedition, and the Sequoia. That said, most people won't notice the difference, and it still works pretty well as a big 3-row SUV. It's just starting to get a little bit old despite this recent update. Anyway though, enough rambling about the Armada. Let's do a little tour and then take it out for a drive. So you can see the updated styling up front. The headlights are now blockier. All the lighting has supposedly been redesigned. This is a Midnight Edition. It's an SL trim, which is middle of the pack. And then the Midnight Edition gets you black trim all around. So it's got a blacked out V-shaped grille. It's got Nissan's updated logo, which is interesting. The actual Nissan logo is the white part, and then you can see the negative space there actually follows the same outline as the old logo, but that's something that'll only interest geeks like me. No real skid plating up front here. This kind of looks like a skid plate, but it's plastic. There's a look at your approach angle, so not quite Land Cruiser-esque, but still, this thing has true low-range four-wheel drive. These are 20-inch wheels. One thing I don't love is this vent right here. This has been on the Armada and the Patrol since the current generation came out, and I don't think that it really fits with the updated design language. Greenhouse has a neat shape to it. Rear window has this little uptick at the back. Badging, you've got Armada now appears across the tailgate, Nissan logo, and then SL right there. Power tailgate, updated taillights, updated rear bumper as well. Everything's just a little bit blockier. Here's a look at the cargo area with the third row folded down. You can see that when the third row seats are down, they don't fold completely flat. There's still a little bit of a bounce to them. It seems like an oversight, but I don't think it should compromise cargo area too much. It just doesn't look neat and tidy back here with that third row folded. Back here you get a couple hooks, cup holders for the third row, no power outlets. There is a 12-volt socket for the cargo area. It isn't immediately obvious how you get these third row seats up either. I think you would probably want to put them up from the interior, but I'm gonna just grab this one right here. Not the easiest thing to do from the cargo area, but then again, in most cases you're gonna be putting them up from the interior anyway. But we'll hop in the third row in a minute, but there's what the cargo area looks like with the third row in place. On par with this segment, I guess. Power tailgate's pretty slow. Still got the chrome door handles here. They feel a little bit dated. Climbing inside though, and the updates to this vehicle really take place in the areas that matter. Things that haven't changed are the door panels, the steering wheel, and the dashboard in these areas. The gauge cluster is new though. It now has a 7-inch screen in between the two mechanical gauges. Infotainment screen is all new, so this entire center stack and the center console have changed for 2021. This infotainment screen is a 12.3-inch unit. It comes with Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay, which is pretty neat. It's also got a fairly intuitive mapping setup. Pinch to zoom works better than it does in many competing infotainment systems. I like this two-sided layout to the screen. So right here you've got navigation, and then over here you've got your media information. Center stack is all new. It's pretty big and chunky. The controls are pretty well spaced out too. So you've got volume, radio tuning, HVAC right here. Here are your air vents and your hazards button. Behind this panel, it folds up and you've got a 12-volt outlet and a wireless charging pad. Wireless charging is not standard, but on vehicles that don't have it, you still get this little storage cubby here. And it's fairly big. It can fit even the oversized phones of today. Beneath that, USB-A and USB-C. Always nice to see that. And then here's your integrated trailer brake controller. So the Armada is set up to tow right out of the box. Here are your four-wheel drive controls. Nothing too interesting here. So this thing has a full-time, call it all-wheel drive system. And then you can shift into 4 high, and you can also go into 4 low. So it does have traditional low-range four-wheel drive. There's also a snow mode, a tow mode, and a stability control off button. No locking differentials in this thing, no hill descent control, no off-road assistance systems. All you get really is basic 4 high and 4 low. Here's some controls for the navigation screen on the center console here. Here's your center console box. It looks pretty big, but when you open it, it's actually average sized. There's a button for a power adapter. I believe that's on the back of the console here. There's your look. There's a nice little tray that it comes with, but not as deep as you might expect. Certainly not as deep as the box on the Toyota Sequoia. I think that about covers the front area here. Here's a look at not quite the window sticker because I don't believe this is a production model, but you can see that it is a 2021 Armada SL Midnight Edition. There's no pricing here yet. This thing tops out at around $70,000. So this one has to be somewhere in the 60s is my guess. But you can see 5.6 liter V8, 400 horsepower, 413 pounds-feet. That is mated to a 7-speed automatic transmission. So while this vehicle isn't based on the Titan, it does use the Titan's powertrain, but the Titan got an updated 9-speed automatic transmission with the update it received for 2020. I was kind of surprised to see that the updated Armada here has not received that transmission as well. I read an article that said it just wasn't in Nissan's development timeline to add the 9-speed to the Armada for this year, so the 2021 model sticks with the old 7-speed. I have to think though that next year or the year after the Armada will get the Titan's new 9-speed. Let's check out the back seat. Plenty of space back here. It's what you'd expect from a full-size SUV like this. You've got some HVAC controls on the back of the console here. So that makes sense now. The center console can open from both the front and the back. That's pretty neat, actually. So you've got your release for it up there for the front passengers, and then there's a release on the back, so your second row occupants can access this box as well. So this is pretty odd. I was assuming that this was just the center seat folded down, but this is actually a 7-passenger model. So this isn't a seat right here. Instead, it's this kind of clunky center console. I can't imagine many people would really prefer this to just having a bench seat back here. This is hard plastic. There is a little bit more storage back here. This box is actually significantly bigger than that one. Here you've got 2 cup holders, but other than that, this just seems like wasted space for the sake of wasted space. Now I will attempt to climb into that third row seat. So the seats fold and tumble. That was pretty easy. Fold that up. That was also easy. Then fold this down and back up. So, wow. Yeah, not the best third row. Foot area is pretty spacious. completely flat back here. Still not the best use of space. This center console for the second row is, well, it's dumb. Not sure how that opened up. I was in 4 high. There we go. So now it's in 4-wheel drive auto, which is more like all-wheel drive. This thing's definitely big, definitely heavy. Just based on the physics of that, it rides pretty well. One thing I'm already liking is that the infotainment system does not include any of the HVAC controls. Those are still hard physical buttons, which is the way it should be. There's 50, so it's pretty quick. 400 horsepower, 413 pounds-feet of torque when you feed it premium fuel. That's respectable for the segment. Toyota's 5.7-liter V8 makes 381 horsepower and 401 pounds-feet of torque. So on paper, this V8 is a little bit more powerful than Toyota's. And it's slightly more efficient too. Don't quote me on that, but I think it might have like a 1 mpg advantage. This thing is sold as the Patrol in foreign markets. And in those markets, I kind of think of it as a less hardcore alternative to the Land Cruiser when you're comparing like an Australian market Land Cruiser to an Australian market Patrol. So while this thing doesn't offer all the capability and it isn't quite as overbuilt as the Land Cruiser, it's still designed with a similar job in mind. And for that reason, Nissan has done a fairly good job of covering that up and making this thing luxurious to a degree for sales here in the US, but you can still sense the utilitarian roots of this vehicle, and you're not going to get that from one of the GM SUVs or from the Ford Expedition or from the Toyota Sequoia, really. But the Sequoia is pretty old and dated and obsolete in its own right. Ride is pretty smooth, like I said. Power delivery is good. That's generally what you get with an old school V8 and a 7-speed automatic transmission. Certainly isn't good on fuel, but at least you get good power delivery, good responsiveness, and a solid ride. I should mention that this thing now comes standard with loads of active safety features too. You now get radar cruise control, which can go all the way down to 0 miles per hour, so you can use it in stop and go traffic, which is nice, convenient if you sit in traffic a lot, if that ever becomes a thing again. You also get things like lane intervention, blind spot monitoring, things that you want in a large vehicle like this. Of course, I can't speak to how well those work. I haven't really gotten that much time with this vehicle. I've read that Nissan's lane intervention system, at least in the Armada here, can be a little obtrusive and not quite as helpful as it could be. So while those features look great on paper, whether or not you like them is probably dependent on you getting out on the highway and spending a few hours behind the wheel of this thing. The integrated trailer brake controller is a nice touch. I think people who would buy this over, say, a Pathfinder are people who need the V8 engine and need the towing capacity. In the full-size SUV segment, the Expedition offers the most towing capacity. It's rated at up to 9,300 pounds. The Armada here is rated at 8,500 pounds. So the Armada is positioned pretty well in this segment with regards to towing. So now let's get into what interests me in the Armada, and that's the fact that this vehicle is a slightly Americanized and renamed version of the Nissan Patrol. What's cool about the Patrol to me is that it's kind of a Toyota Land Cruiser competitor. It's really the closest thing to a Land Cruiser competitor in markets like Australia and the Middle East. I wish I could speak more to how overbuilt this thing is or isn't, but what I know is that in a lot of applications that the Land Cruiser would normally be used in, the Patrol serves in as well. Now I know that the Patrol isn't as highly regarded as the Land Cruiser. It's more of a lower cost alternative that offers most of the capability at a lower price. And I know I kind of alluded to it before, but you can sense that this vehicle isn't as American as something like an Expedition. And that's evident in the lack of huge storage cubbies on the center console here. That's evident in the way the third row seat kind of feels like an afterthought. It doesn't completely disappear into the floor when you fold it. It kind of sits there. The third row just altogether doesn't feel very American. Most big SUVs with a third row sold in the United States are treated as family haulers first and foremost. So they're going to have tons of cup holders, tons of USB ports, all these things to make the kids comfortable in the third row. And the Armada doesn't really have that. I was a little surprised to see. And also, while I call this thing a Land Cruiser competitor, it doesn't really have all the tricks and toys that you get with a Land Cruiser. There's no tailgate in the rear. This thing just has a regular hatch. There's no clever integrated storage cubbies. The third row can't be removed in this vehicle. It doesn't have the ground clearance. It doesn't have crawl control or multi-terrain select or off-road turn assist or a locking center differential or some trick sway bar disconnect system like the Land Cruiser has. This thing has been pretty decontented. For sales in the US, Nissan has really not made off-road capability a priority with this vehicle. It does have true low-range four-wheel drive, but beyond that, this thing is low in the hierarchy of off-roaders that are sold in the United States. Let's put it that way. It's very, very low. In fact, the Ford Expedition, which is about as American as you can get, offers a locking rear differential and some actual off-road features. So yeah, this thing isn't really an off-roader other than having four lows. So say there's a dirt road to your cabin that gets washed out once a year. Yeah, maybe you'll enjoy that four low. But if you're gonna be going off-road often, then the Armada doesn't really have too many advantages over the other full-size SUVs on sale. So there's your look at the updated 2021 Nissan Armada. Like I said, the updates really only address some key areas that were lagging behind pretty significantly in this vehicle. That being the infotainment setup mainly in the entire center stack. In previous years, the center stack felt pretty dated. The infotainment system is now competent. Couldn't really ask for much more. Maps look good. It's high resolution. Same with the screen and the gauge cluster here. It's good enough. Gives you plenty of information. It's on par with what most vehicles offer. Altogether, the updated styling, apparently the lighting has been redone. It's a little blockier, a little chunkier overall. Makes it maybe feel newer at first glance, but the Armada's limitations are still there. I keep coming back to the fact that this vehicle is really based on the foreign market Patrol that has been sold since the 2011 model year, so it feels dated. This weird console thing in the second row is just frankly dumb. The third row is fine, but most full-size third row SUVs are better in that regard. Interior quality is not too bad, but it just doesn't feel as new as something like a Yukon or an Expedition. That said, this vehicle can be had for several $1,000s less than most of its competitors, so I think most people that buy it, they need that full-size SUV, they need 3 rows, they tow once in a while, and they're looking to save a few dollars. And if that's you, then I think the Armada is going to be pretty appealing. Thanks for watching.